Watch money. Money is the barometer of society's virtue. When you see that trading is done not by consent, but by compulsion. When you see that in order to produce, you must obtain permission from those who produce nothing. When you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods, but in favors. When you see that men get richer by graft and by pull rather than work. And your laws don't protect you against them, but protect them against you. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. Ayn Rand. There is $8 trillion in global sovereign debt that needs to be rolled over in 2012. This does not include state, local, corporate, or personal debt. There is simply not enough cash in the world to buy all this debt. What is worse, who would? Who in their right mind would loan cash today for 10 years for a guaranteed return of 1.85%? We know that inflation is at least running at 10% in the real world, and you are taxed on the gains that you make before inflation, making bonds a very bad choice for anybody. But this debt must be funded or our entire way of life ends. What most people do not know is that our money is debt. Every dollar that comes into existence has a dollar of debt and interest attached to it. The only way to pay back this debt and interest in this debt-based monetary system is that we need to create more debt every year in excess of the debt and interest accrued the year before, or we suffer the mother of all margin calls. There was a movie in 1981 called Rollover that highlighted what would happen if this debt was not rolled over.
You have 21214 listed as a foreign exchange account. But you don't buy other currency with those dollars, you buy gold. But you have to do it slowly, because if anybody finds out what's going on, the dollar will drop and all the Saudi investments over here won't be worth shit.
When the Arabs learn that word of what they've been doing is out, they may panic. Move a big chunk of funds too fast or the wrong way. Really destabilize the monetary markets. Then the dollar will collapse. Whereupon there'll be a lot of jawboning by the president, and that won't work. Then they'll go to selling gold, and that won't work either. Then they'll have to go to capital controls, freeze foreign assets, stop any money from going in or out, and that will be the end of all the markets. That'll really be the finish. Then you'll see a worldwide depression that'll make the 1930s look like a kindergarten. In 2 months, you'll have bread lines in Detroit, riots in Pittsburgh. In 6 months, you'll see grass right over Rodeo Drive, and Michigan Boulevard, and Fifth Avenue, and I won't have done it, Hub. You will. All because you tried to stop a movement that couldn't be stopped anyway. Listen to me, Hub. Money, capital, has a life of its own. It's a force of nature, like gravity, like the oceans. It flows where it wants to flow. This whole thing with the Arabs and gold is inevitable. We're just going with the tide. The only question is whether you want to let it go like an unguided missile and raise hell, or whether you want to keep it in the hands of responsible people. Believe me, Hub, the dollar will hold. Believe me. The system will be fine, providing nobody panics.
The Arabs yanked every penny they had with us. They hit all the other outfits, too, so it's across the board. That means every bank in the country out there is going to be struggling for liquidity, trying to cover those cash withdrawals. We're dumping everything. Treasury bills, bonds, Fannie Mae's, commercial papers, we want it all sold. Fed funds, euro dollars, borrow whatever you can find up to 200 million. Foreign exchange, no positions. Bullion, grab what you can get. All right, let's hit it. And pray.
Stock market's off 75 points. The dollar's appreciated 10% and moving down. They even yanked the euro dollar deposits that weren't due. Of course, New York is practically down the tubes, and gold just went over 2,000.
But tonight, that'll be cheap.
I hit you at 50 for 5 million. I recorded the amount you want to here.
Hi, Virginia, it's me. I want you to listen, and listen very carefully. As soon as you hang up, I want you to go to the closet, take a suitcase, and get to the bank.
It began 8 days ago when a group of Arab investors withdrew billions of dollars from U.S. banks. That in turn started a chain reaction on the world money markets. Dollars, pounds, marks, francs, yen. Not one currency escaped. This scene outside a Manhattan bank was duplicated all over the world as people saw their life savings become worthless in a matter of hours. Good evening, I'm George Page in New York, and this is another in our series of reports on the world economic crisis. The growing paralysis of the industrial world has left millions without jobs, without money, and without hope. Crowds of unemployed poured into Washington yesterday. They stood in silent protest before the nation's leaders. At the same time, more than 1 million people packed St. Peter's Square, where the Pope urged calm and nonviolence. The Pontiff asked for prayers for world leaders, prayers and peace and reason. But the last 24 hours have been marked by growing protests and ever-increasing violence. Last night, demonstrators burned American currency in front of the White House, and attempts to put out the fires led to a confrontation with police. Every hour, from every corner of the globe, there are new reports of outraged crowds demanding action. A bankrupt world seems to be teetering on the very edge of anarchy.
And now for continued coverage from around the world. A statement was issued from the OPEC meeting today that the leading oil-producing nations would resume oil exports as soon as the international monetary markets have stabilized. The panic has spread across political and philosophical boundaries. The USSR and the developed Eastern European communist countries, dependent on Western trade and capital, have witnessed the same riots that have taken place in the West. The Economic Summit Conference tomorrow will be attended by leaders of the West, the East, and the Third World. Said one, there is a need for a unity of purpose and resolve unequaled since the end of World War II. At this time of crisis, there has been a turning to the past as well as the future. Words spoken by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the depths of the Depression were quoted in the Senate today. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. We face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. Each age is a dream that is dying, or one that is coming to birth.
Since this must be done, let's look at some of the options available, and I can tell you that none of them are good if you have any cash, stocks, bonds, pensions, insurance policies, or real estate. The government can massively raise taxes and cut spending that would destroy an already weak economy. The Federal Reserve and other privately held central banks can buy more debt and to continue printing money, but this would most likely cause other sovereign nations to dump the dollar, adding to the inflationary fire here at home. They could allow the free market to determine the real rate of interest that would reflect the true risk of lending money to an insolvent, warmongering, spendthrift nations in systemic decline. With $140 trillion in unfunded liabilities in the system cannot handle high interest rates. America could just default on the debt, and we would see a massive upheaval in every aspect of our lives and would guarantee that it would lead us to war. There is one option that would buy more time that you are not paying attention to. The government can confiscate your retirement savings. This is a very real and distinct possibility when governments cannot raise capital in the bond markets, or when governments cannot raise taxes in a faltering economy. They could very easily go after the fat, free money sitting in people's retirement accounts. If that was just the end of the thieving, that would be one thing, but it never stops there. When Argentina went through their hyperinflation, they froze all accounts, checking, savings, retirement accounts, and then devalued and inflated away the currency. People could only take out small amounts of money out of the bank, while the majority of their assets turned into nothing. Think this won't happen here? Almost a year ago, the Department of Labor floated a trial balloon about annuitizing their 401ks. The plan was to get rid of those pesky and risky managed retirement accounts and put their savings into safe and secure treasury bonds. We are at a point where China, Japan, and the rest of the world refuses to buy any more of our debt. The Federal Reserve is already buying 80% of the new debt and has balked at QE3. And people wonder who in the world is going to buy into the biggest bubble ever? Well, the answer just might be your retirement account. And it didn't take long, but the Treasury has already started the thieving. When we had the debt ceiling debate that was ongoing, the Treasury dipped into the pensions. They bought a couple days by not meeting its investment into government retirement funds. But this trial balloon is just tipping the toe into the water of the trillions that we'll see before all this is over. There will be no grand reform, and everything is going to plan as the world gets ready for the largest wealth transfer in human history. To the millions that have been riding this Ponzi gravy train, they are going to meet a very rude awakening when the dollar collapses. These people will have their paradigm shattered when the wealth that they thought they had is wiped away. They will also be out of a job and realize that they're ill-prepared to join a very real economy. During the collapse of the Soviet Union, those that worked inside the system were the last to adapt to a new paradigm, and often failing to adapt at all. Those that see this mathematically inevitable collapse coming and actually do something about it will have a huge head start as the rest of the world tries to figure out what the hell happened. Unlike us, when we reach the end of our credit line, the government will never stop its profligate ways. It will simply blow through every dollar it can get its hand on, trying to put off the day of reckoning. I believe that before all this is over and the dollar dies, your retirement funds will be wiped clean. If you have a 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, Social Security, annuity, insurance, or any long-term savings plan or pension, be prepared to have it destroyed by inflation or outright confiscation. My question to you is, what are you going to do about it? The alarm has been sounded. The Treasury is coming. The Treasury is coming. Are you going to risk your entire life savings in the hopes that this Ponzi scheme will pay out before the collapse? Will you wait until the real purchasing power of those dollars are worth nothing? Or will you get out while the music's still playing? What is worse, paying a 10% penalty or a 100% confiscation penalty? If you can't get your money out, borrow against it. And if you can do neither, kiss it goodbye and start preparing for something else.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
We don't have a system that's working. We have one that basically moves cash around, and we can guarantee cash benefits as far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power.
It doesn't get any more clear than that. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Charles Darwin.